Hey flosstube, how's it going? Nemo Sarath here with next installment of my lineage of videos, as sparse as they've been. Finally going to get around to doing our mounting video this time. However, to begin with, I just want to do a quick progress update with my HAED. Finally finished the third page. Sorry it took so long. I was supposed to have finished before the 10th of November, and here it is now, the 2nd of December. All the early November election fiascos and then Thanksgiving, family, etc., etc. Didn't get a whole lot of time to stitch or do much else. Anywho, I've got page number 3 done. I know it's a little hard to see, but there it is. Full what I've got done so far. Here it is again, the pattern, the design I'm doing. Trucking along quite nicely, just like I said, a little behind schedule at the moment. Might have it done before 2020, maybe not. Anywho, as I've said, this is a video where I'm going to talk about how I mount our finished works onto foamboard. Framing is going to have to take to another time, just because I don't really have the tools and materials to do the custom frames that I'm going to for some of these works. You can always take it to a professional framer. I think we all know the cost and expenses on that. You can always try and custom fit your design around a prefabricated frame that your finished design is 10 inch by 10 inch. You find a frame that is 11 by 11. You cut your foam to fit the frame and then stretch your project over that. And that way you can just fit the project right into the frame itself. A lot of times you can the custom made or store-bought frames, will have a cardboard backer or whatever. You can just pull that out and understand that when you're using a 1/4 inch foam, it's going to fit in snugly, it's going to hold tight, and you really don't need that backer that comes from the factory. So anywho, let's go ahead and get started. Tools and materials you will need. Good cutting surface. I've got a nice quilter's cutting mat. We've got a ruler. I like these wide ones, the quilting ruler. You can use like a regular yardstick, but when you've got like an inch wide to hold onto, it's a lot harder versus a quilter's ruler that I can just put my full hands on, weight on, and keep it straight. On my very first video, I had a question from someone. Great question. How do I cut my foam board without it moving? That every time they try and cut across, the foam would rotate on them and they don't get a straight line. To bring that, one, sharp knife. Don't use anything dull. I like thinner knives. You can use your extending cutter. You could use a box knife, good, sharp, thin, fresh blade. I prefer the X-Acto. It's almost scalpel-like, it's easier to hold like a pencil. I go with a curved blade versus a straight one. That way, regardless of what angle I'm holding the knife at, it has a good contact with the surface. Sorry about the distance on the camera here. The other part to that, do not try and cut your foam in 1 or 2 passes. You try and do a complete cut in 1 or 2 passes, you're going to end up grabbing onto the foam itself and letting it rotate on you. I do 3 passes. Top paper, the foam itself, bottom paper. If you need 4 or 5 passes just to kind of really get that good, crisp, smooth edge, that works. Of course, you're going to need your foam board. This is a scrap piece that I'm going to demonstrate a cut with to help save some time on this video. I've already cut the foam backer I'm using on Lilith's Beach Romance piece. Other materials you will need: the staples that are going to go around the outside edge that actually holds the fabric to the foam board. Use construction staples, staple gun staples. If you use office staples, they are a lot thinner, they bend, and they are shorter, usually like a 1/4 inch in length. I go for a 1/2 inch. Digs into the foam a lot easier, and because they do not bend as easily, the fabric is unable to really pull the staple out at like a curved angle, like when you're removing a nail from a wall. A coffee cup is great and wonderful because you're going to need to punch all these staples out. Of course, they come in nice long little strips. Trying to break that strip up all by itself is never easy. Put your hand over coffee cup. Just that easy. Get yourself a lot of staples. It's not to say that you couldn't do 20 staples, put them in, come back, do 20 more staples, put those in. I punch out almost an entire strip, and if I end up with extra staples left over, I'm not worried about throwing them away. You don't want to just blindly pop them in because they will bounce out and then you've got staples all over the house. With us, with animals, I really want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Hate for one of them to accidentally swallow it thinking it's food, you know, not the brightest animals. So I tend to put my hand over. You could use a washcloth. I've also found like taking an empty toilet paper tube and holding it and punching your staples works. It will help direct the staple into the cup, keep it from popping back out. If you use your hand, let me tell you, be careful. I accidentally was not paying attention watching TV and I got into the webbing of my thumb. That did not feel too great. Don't do it. Writing utensil, a high contrast color that on your final project, or finished, project, you will want to baste. See if I can get that. See that little tick mark on there? Baste your center lines. Point of that being is, yes, it's centering your main project. You're also going to be marking center lines on your finished cut foam board. For sake of visibility, little paper. You can see I've marked center marks here and on the sides. You will match those based lines, that basting stitch, to these marks, and it'll help you center up the project on the foam board. Some of the writing, I don't know if it's coming through. I will write this on the foam board. It helps. I've got the actual measurement of this page here. It is an 8.5 by 11 sheet. If pretending that this is a project using 14 count Aida, that gives me exactly 59.5 by 77 stitches. Those halves will kind of give you an issue. You also want to, if your project is nice enough on the pattern to actually give you the stitch count, this project is 200 by 100 stitches. Great, because that makes things a little bit easier. The Beachside Romance only gave the measurement by inches, and even then, when you just do the math that a 14 count Ada half point should be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which would give me the 59 1/2 by 77. On the Beachside Romance, mathematically that did not come out. The pattern itself did not give me the stitch count, so I grabbed out the pattern, counted out the grid, and found that this one was specifically, the half mark was 100 by 78, 200 by 156. Mathematically, on the calculator, it didn't come out that way. That's why sometimes you just might take the moment to actually count it out and get yourself an accurate center point. Those are going to be necessary. I do a high contrast so it's easier to see, and it's a based. Once you've got the piece mounted, you can just pull these lines out and no one would be any the wiser. Anywho, let's just go ahead and move ahead. And again, wide ruler, you're going to end up setting down, finding, do your measurements on it, measure twice, cut once. Otherwise you'll be going out, buying another sheet of foam board. And it's going to be 3 cuts. Your first cut's going to be that top piece of paper. Don't push really super hard, otherwise you're going to grab onto the material and you're going to end up turning the material. You're not going to get yourself a good straight line. That was the top sheet. Let's go for the foam underneath. Pass number 3 is cutting the paper on the back. It really is kind of easy to cut the foam board. A lot of what helps, again, is using a good wide ruler that you can put your full weight onto. Using the skinny rulers, you're kind of stuck trying to cut it that way. It works, but you do yourself a service by going to your local sewing store and getting yourself a quilting ruler. Anyway, skipping ahead to, we've got our finished cut piece of material. I've got my tack marks onto it. You'll be taking your project and putting it over. Here is a little bit of a trick and a hassle that you're going to have to think about, is what is the width of your border section you want. On my tiger here, we do have a 1/2 inch layover. On the 14 count Ada, that would be 7 stitches out. On the beach side, Courtney is, or Lilith, excuse me, is planning on having it as a glassless minimal matting. So I'm going with a 1/4 inch. 14 count, that's actually 3 1/2 stitches. So I've pushed the border out to 3/8. That's just over the 1/4 inch. That way I can go 4 stitches out. What is the point of that? Grab a couple staples, set them there. Start from the center. If you want to start on the sides, that's cool. I like starting on the top. Regardless, you're going to start from the center. I'm counting out 4. So I'm 4 holes out. Go ahead and stick the staple, come on. Okay, yeah. The 14 count ADA on these staples is just a little more narrow than the staple itself. What I'm saying, why I'm saying that, I like to try and get the staples through the holes themselves. Trying to stick the staple through like the middle of the square can be done. No harm, no foul. I guess I am just kind of like one of those little OCDs that I will really want my staples to go through the holes. Excuse me. And you can just kind of tweak the staple in or out so that you can get it properly through the holes. I've got it 4 stitches up. That's going to give me my border around. And this is where we're going to line that basting mark up with the center mark that you put on your foam board, and just by hand push it in. I would not in any way, shape, or form advise taking your staple gun and going click, 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 click across, because you're not going to get it perfectly straight and true. When you do it by hand like this, I can very specifically follow the lines that I'm dealing with, the ADA grid line. Let's see, staple is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 7 across. So I've got the one staple in. I will go over 7 holes, put in the next staple, which will cover 7 more. Essentially, it's alternating, if that makes sense. You'll have 1 staple per inch. And just push her in. And you're going to just follow putting in the staples all the way across. Take the time to just kind of make sure you pull this tight so that you don't end up bunching the fabric up. Going a little extreme there, but get the idea that you want to pull it, set your staple. Going from center, you can go alternate until you're all the way out. I myself like to just go all the way across on one side, and then all the way across on the other. Another method that you can take is going from top to bottom to top to bottom to top to bottom to top to bottom. Again, that works. I find it is easier for me to just deal with the top side, and then I will come to the other, and takes a little bit more hand strength on this, because now we're going across the top side, it's just draped over. All you're really trying to worry about on tension is side to side pull. When you get to your bottom side, you're now having to pull up and pull out at the same time as you're laying your staples across. If you stay along the same line, same row of holes, once you have all your staples done, you actually will have a very square image. Once you've got all your staples across, and then you go to your sides, or if you started with the sides, go to your tops and bottoms, and it's again the same process going across. Just you take your basting center line, match it up with your half mark on your foam board. Going from the side of the image, I'm counting out 4, and that's where I'm going to stick my staples. One of the great results from using the foam board is it is a very rigid and hard surface. It doesn't flex a whole lot. It's not going to let the image bunch. It's going to help keep everything tight and a nice flat image that once you have it framed, it'll remain as such. Some of our earlier pieces that I've framed, I really did just take the frame, took the fabric, set it down, and just very carefully put in the backing to it. And here, months, years later, I can kind of see where some of the fabric is starting to bunch or relax, stretch. I'm thinking I'm probably going to want to go back and yank those out of the frame and mount them on foam board like I have with my Tiger, with Courtney's Coral Lagoon, and like I'm going to be doing with the beachside romance here. Once you have your project completed or all stapled in, you are going to have a lot of fabric here on the back that is just going to want to stand up. I've alleviated, these are not really tight strings. I took B5200 and just, it's to help hold the fabric down, help hold it back. The stitching that I have is actually up here on the corners. See if that comes through. Where I have laid the corner down, and then I actually did a line of stitches across the top and in the back here, so it helps hold it all down. Like I said, with these strings, they're not really tight. It's mostly just holding the fabric down. It is all your staples that are going to hold your project in place. Part of me would love to just do this full thing all out in one sitting with y'all. This is going to be a very long video if that is the desire you guys want to see. So I'm going to go ahead and just let you know that's pretty much the gist of things. There's not a whole lot more to it beyond that. Take your pattern, find out where your center marks are, do a basting stitch so that you know where the actual center is on the fabric, on the image. Do your measurements on your foam board and give yourself the half marks. And I've got all four on the page, on the paper here, all four sides. I like writing down the information of what's the size of the foam board that I'm using, what is my stitch count that I'm dealing with, and pretty much it's just sitting down and actually doing it. Measure twice, cut once, otherwise you're getting more foam. I suggest getting a quilting ruler. It lets you have more control on the ruler itself so it doesn't rotate on you. Take multiple passes. Don't try and cut the foam board in one or two cuts. You'll grab the foam, it will turn and rotate, and then you've got a wavy, weird line. Using good sharp instruments. Like I said, I like the X-Acto cutter. I imagine you probably could use a fabric cutting wheel. However, I don't think I want to dull out my roto cutter as such. Blades for that are a little more expensive than replacement X-Actos, replacement box cutter knives, replacement slide cutter knives. You're dealing with sharp instruments. Please be careful. Don't cut yourself. Unless your Ada is red to begin with, that's going to show up and doesn't wash out easily. And be patient. Take your time doing this. I probably could finish this whole thing in about a half hour and then come back afterwards and nitpick the holy snot out of, well, messed up here, the measurements are off there, it looks a little sloppy. Take your time. It is worth, if it is worth doing right, do it right. Take your time. Ultimately, I think that's pretty much about it on this. Not a real huge undertaking, it's just timely. Be patient. And yeah. If you have any further questions, please, by all means, leave it to me in the comments. I will try and answer everything as quickly as I can. If there's anything else that you feel that I may be leaving out or need to elaborate on, please tell me. Otherwise, I do hope y'all have yourselves a good stitching day. Stay warm out there. It's a little chilly out. And yeah. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a good one.